It's said that everyone has that special soulmate out there that's just waiting for them. When it comes to James Bond, it's knowing who to choose. Welcome back to Gear Up Productions. I'm Nicholas C. Gear, and this is Jamesuary. I wanted to do something a little different since we're actually doing a tier list today. We're tier listing all of the beautiful, amazing, talented Bond women. So I really like this setup. Let me know what you think. Maybe some things can change. So before we get into anything, I want to make sure that this is known that this is my subjective, my taste, my opinion only. I actually have a link to this tier list down in the description. I've made everything custom myself. If you want to check it out and let me know how you did it, go ahead, click on that link. I'd love to see how you rank all 28 of these Bond women. Yep, that's right, 28. So I know with James Bond, there's the femme fatale, sacrificial lamb. There's women that he just hooks up with, and then there's like the main overall girl. And for each film or at least screen adaptation project, I chose to do a one Bond girl that's throughout the entire film and sticks around for the most part. I think that just makes everything simple. It evens out easily, and you're just not throwing in a bunch of different women here and there. Going through the tier list, we actually have it very simple. At the top, Licensed to Wed. These are the ones that are just so amazing on every level. They help out with the action. They're good chemistry with Bond. Everything about them is just so perfect and amazing, and you just got to put a ring on that finger. Built for the Field are ones that are pretty good. They're pretty up there, but they're not the top tier. They can come in, they can help out, they can be effective. They're kind of memorable, but they're not like the top tier, but they're still really good Bond women. Of course, effective allies are effective allies. They're kind of middle of the road. They maybe have like one memorable thing about them, but they don't overall stand out for the most part. But they're still good to have around, and they're still pretty good help. Desk support are those that are, for the most part, they're getting into that territory where they're not really that helpful, and they're only there to really do certain things and to kind of help Bond or to be the Bond girl for the most part. But they still have a few little ticks. They have something about them that just sticks out just enough. So for the most part, they're at least going to be stuck at the desk supporting. Spilled the drink. These are the ones that get in the way of everything. They ruin the plans. They somehow are just the worst ones to compliment Bond and to help him out. And you're amazed that Bond is even still with this girl or around this girl, or that the fact that she's even in this film. These are ones that are just not good, and I think it shows with some of these. So yeah. So spilled drink, because if you spill the martini, what are we even doing? First up, we have Anya. Anya is really good. One of the things that I loved about The Spy Who Loved Me is that from the moment that they set it up, they tell you like what kind of relationship this is going to be, and it's a bit tropey, but I like that the two characters are these two different spies that can relate to each other and they kind of connect. And Anya's just kind of a badass. She does a lot of cool, memorable moments. There's a scene where she clicks that button and fires the missile from the submarine car. She's just cool, confident. She has like a bit of a revenge story. Yeah, I think I got to put her in License to Wed. I think she is just that good of a Bond girl. You remember her name. She stands out. She's complimentary to Bond. It's one of the best parts of the movie is whenever they're together and working with each other. So I got to go with it. Also, with the way that I'm going in order here, everything is just kind of placed in alphabetical order. So it's a bit of a mix up, which I think is kind of fun. So going into the next one, we actually have Camille Montez. This is the girl who teams up with Bond in Quantum of Solace. And like Quantum of Solace, I think there's a very decent story here with her as a Bond character, with the way that she kind of complements Bond in a way, with both of them having sort of a revenge story, even though Bond's in this movie isn't really going anywhere for the most part until the end. I think she's good on her own, but she kind of just sticks out like a sore thumb Not because of the acting or anything like that, but just because her whole thing with Bolivian and the general is kind of almost secondary to Bond. You could cut it and not really miss anything. They should have found a better way to really make all this stuff connect. She helps out, so I'll give her that, but there's nothing about it that I think sticks out as like, yeah, this works. And I guess maybe that's the point. Maybe it's supposed to be fine for the most part, but I don't know. After Casino Royale, could have been a little bit better. They could have tried to do something a little bit more. I'm going to stick her in Effective Ally because she is pretty effective for the most part. Thunderball's Domino Duval. This is an interesting one. I think for the most part of the film, she's actually kind of weak. Her and Bond have like a little bit of interaction, but they don't really connect up until the end of the film. I think in like the last 45 minutes, not even an hour of the film. For the most part, I think she's fine. I think she works. I enjoy what we get of her on the screen. Like a lot with Thunderball, there's almost this thing where they don't really fully commit. They don't really commit to that whole revenge arc that you expect it to happen once she finds out what happens to her brother. And by the end, I think it does pay off somewhat satisfyingly. I mean, it's kind of rushed. There are other Bond women that I think stand out more or do more in this situation. She kind of just feels like a damsel in distress a little bit by the end, even though she does get the last kill. Yeah, I'm gonna stick her in desk support. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, yeah. Moving on. Coming right after that, the remake to Thunderball Never Say Never Again, Domino Patrici or Patrici. Definitely not that second one. My bad. If I didn't think Domino from Thunderball was that good, I really don't think Domino from Never Say Never is that good. Okay, to be fair, I think the actor is doing a lot better and she interacts a lot more with Bond. It's almost one of those things where it's like they change it a little, but just not enough to actually make it impactful. This film, I've said this in the review, this film takes place in the 80s and they had every way to make it 10 times better than Thunderball, but they just did the bare minimum. And this goes along well with Domino in this film as well. She's not like a cool, strong character, and she actually learns what happens to her brother very early on in the film. She kind of just meanders around and is afraid of the villains. She never like feels like she rises above like they kind of set her up in the film. It feels like she could have been much more. Yeah, I think she's more of a stereotype in this film, and some of the things that they do to her is like really egregious for the time in which this was made. Like that whole spa scene with Bond just rubs me the wrong way. The fact that she's just okay with it, yeah, no. We have our first spilled the martini. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe that's a bit harsh. She is a nice person for the most part, but yeah, no. The world is not enough with Dr. Christmas Jones. Yes, that is actually the name that they gave her. Oh boy, what can I say here other than the fact that she's played by Denise Richards? Now, I said this in my review, no hate to the actor, but it's kind of like the rest of the cast other than Neil Patrick Harris from Starship Troopers. None of you are good. I think for me personally, I got to put her in spilled the drink. She is pretty much only here because she's the only one who could defuse the nuclear weapon because there's no way in anyone's right mind that Bond is doing that, obviously. The character is literally here, I think, just to get soaking wet and look beautiful because Denise Richards is absolutely beautiful. That's also something I want to say for all these women. I'm not rating them on any kind of like scale of beauty. I think they're all very beautiful. They're all very lovely in their own ways. So yeah, not disrespecting anything there, but she's not much of a character. They kind of just needed a Bond girl because the one who is the main Bond girl for the movie is actually our bad guy, and it is a pretty good twist and move for the film to have done that. For the most part, I just don't vibe with it. Moonraker's Holly Goodhead, or Dr. Holly Goodhead, my bad. This, I think, is actually a very effective ally. Moonraker is a film that I struggle a lot to actually see the appeal for and to see why anyone really likes it. But with her, I'm putting her up in Built for the Field. I think she is an effective ally. Her and Bond have a little bit of a connection. She's another one of those spies who helps Bond along the way, although it's revealed very late. But she's actually smart, capable. She's actually used a lot in the film. She flies the rocket. She knows a lot of the smart technical detail that Bond wouldn't. And this is one of those times where, that actually helps for the most of the film as Bond is in a situation that he can't really deal with. She gets some good lines, some good banter. I like that she's sort of antagonistic and then they work together. And that scene at the end with them is pretty iconic. I mean, if you're going to do a space scene, you got to kind of have them, levitating with the bed sheets. So, yeah. Dr. Madeline Swan from both Spectre and No Time to Die, though I guess I'm counting it more for Spectre in the one time entry, but she is in both films, so kind of does help that she is one of those characters who carries on from a previous film into this one and builds her character out better. I think the journey that her and Bond go on all the way till the end is very emotional and very satisfying. Though she's not a character that really gets in on the action too much, but she can handle herself and she knows how to take care of herself. Definitely by No Time to Die, I love that she's just a mother trying to protect her kid. I think the only thing that I really have problem with this character is that they feels like they force some love interest to give like that emotional, satisfying punch to Bond. More so in Spectre, it kind of just feels like I said, forced. I just don't think it works as naturally as it should. And like a lot of Spectre, it's this weird retconning that I don't think was needed. So while her and Daniel Craig, I think, have a really good chemistry and work together overall, I'm only going to stick her up in Battlefield Ready. I, I mean, it just has to be that way. Yeah, sorry. Skyfall's Eve Moneypenny. This I'm going ahead and sticking up into License to Wed. This I forgot the actors' names, but they find the perfect way to capture what made some of those first introductions and early moments of every single Bond film so great. Moneypenny and Bond have such a connection in this that feels like just two people that genuinely care for each other, and I just absolutely dig it. I also like that by the end of the film, she's here from beginning to end, but they don't get together. And I like how it kind of twists and satisfies everything with another one of these Daniel Craig entries. Because if you notice, this isn't one of those series where they can just go to next film and say, hey, here's a new girl. These films connect and they align with each other. So the way that they play out Moneypenny in this, I think, works out very explanationary. She's also just great. She knows action. She's combat ready. She helps out Bond here and there and they just have that great banter, like I said before. I also like that she's used as a way to help build Bond back up after what she did to him in the beginning of the film. And I just don't think she needs to be like a super character who they get with at the end and they fall in love and live happily ever after. I think for what the film's going for, it's another one of things that Skyfall just does perfectly. Now we have Jinx from Die Another Day. Oh boy, I get to talk about Die Another Day again. All right, to be fair, she is a pretty strong and impressive character. Hell, she was actually likable so much that they originally thought about giving her her own solo movie. I would have been amazed to see what that turned out to be. I feel like with a lot of roles in the early 2000s that Halle Berry ended up getting, sort of like Catwoman, she's good or she makes the material work, but man, is the film that she has to go with just not good at all. They had this weird sexual tension and banter with each other, which I do like, but it's kind of just automatic. They don't really grow as characters. They don't really get to know each other. They're just like, "Hey, you look good. Oh, hey, you look good." And then they're just together by the end of the film. She's good as her own character. She knows how to handle herself in any action scene, and I think she's just a cool little spy addition to this universe. I just don't really think her and Bond would work together or even get along, and it's weird that they do. I think for this, I'm sticking her up in effective ally. That's kind of just where she lands for me, and yeah, that's just how I feel about it. Honey Rider, you're the first Bond girl in Doctor No, so man, you set a bit of a standard. She's got an iconic look. I think the actress Ursa is doing the best that she can. She's more of a model, not really an actress. I don't really care for Doctor No, but I don't think she's bad. I think she just shows up late and then she kind of just is missing from the final battle. It's weird the way that they set it up. She weirdly has this plot and this notion about how Dr. No killed her father, but it never comes up again after it's first mentioned. Yeah, I think I'm just going to stick her in guest support. I don't want to put her too low because she is the first one. She's very beautiful. I think she complements Bond. I think once they actually show up and they interact with each other, the film actually becomes much more lively. Like, hey, you've been missing this entire time from the film. The Living Daylights, Cara Milloy. This is one of those Bond girls who I think is just very sweet and very kind. I love that she's just this woman that gets wrapped up in all of this chaos with Bond, but she really just wants to achieve her dreams and be like a famous musician. She's not one who's supposed to be very effective with the action and helping out with Bond, but there are moments where she kind of almost hinders and doesn't work well with Bond, or at least she's used as a plot device to sort of have him have to do something against what he would usually do in order to help her. Don't really care for a trope like that. She is really good and she's one of the best parts of the Living Daylights, so I'm going to stick her up in Battlefield Ready. I don't think they quite get there just enough, but I love that it is just a nice, sweet, somber relationship, and I love that Bond feels like he actually cares about her and wants nothing bad to happen to her. Now we have You Only Live Twice, Kissy Suzuki. Damn, I was about to put her in Spilled the Drink, but she actually isn't that bad. Okay, I'm gonna put her in Death Support. Okay, look, here's the thing. Her as a character, she shows up late. Her and Bond have no chemistry whatsoever, but she's pretty confident. She handles herself. She gets in on the action. She even, I think, kills a couple guys here and there with the whole Toho aspect ending of the You Only Live Twice. So for the most part, I think she's an effective person herself, but we don't really get to see her and Bond grow as characters. You Only Live Twice is one of those films where they do the sacrificial lamb that I don't like, and they kill off the main girl that Bond actually is having a little flirtatious banter with and he actually cares about, and they just kill her off so ceremoniously because he then gets with this girl for some reason who has to be his wife or something like that in a traditional Japanese marriage. I don't know. I don't. This film is weird. This film gets weird by the end with all the stuff that they cram in, and she's just not really memorable. I don't think she sticks out. I don't really remember anything. I really had to. I like the fact that her name is Kissy is just feels offensive as well. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's also just a dumb name if in retrospect. So yeah. Mary Goodnight in The Man with the Golden Gun. I have to be honest in saying she's going in Spilled the Drink. She shows up as a spy that Bond knows, and they have a relationship that works together, and that something that they have history, they know each other. But she is one of the things that sucks so much about The Man with the Golden Gun, the humor. She is a damsel in distress if I've ever seen one. Now, she does do a few things here and there, so I'll give her credit on the things that she helps with, but there are so many moments where she gets captured or caught, or she does something that could almost kill and hinder Bond, and I just don't think it works at all. She really is only here so that her and Bond can sail away from the evil island and start getting down to business on that awesome boat. Now we have Melina Havelock from For Your Eyes Only, and she's actually really good. I'm going to stick her up in Effective Allies. I would put her higher if the movie actually would give her a bit more focus and not cut her out of the middle of the film. She has this awesome arc that starts out with her as like this revenge going out justice for her family that was killed very brutally at the beginning of this movie. Honestly, kind of shocking how they do it. She's got an awesome crossbow, an interesting car, and overall I think she works great with Bond, but like a lot of For Your Eyes Only, there's a bit of it where they just kind of forget about her and just kind of sweep it under the rug for the most part. It's sad because her and Bond work well together. She's an interesting and effective ally to him. She helps him find the device that he's been looking for in the sea. I don't know, there's just something about the fact that they just don't pay off her revenge arc even worse than like the dominoes in this franchise. I don't know, it just kind of ticks me off that she's just not in the movie more and they're just not working together. She just kind of shows up whenever the plot demands her, and yeah, I think for that I just got to stick her an effective ally. GoldenEye's Italia Sinfonova. She is a pretty effective ally. I really enjoyed her. I'm going to put her in License to Wed. Now, she does feel a little bit trophy, a little bit damsel in distress, but for the most part, I think she is just an effective ally who's written very well for this 90s era of Bond. I think she is just a really good character. Her and Bond build a relationship that feels pretty genuine for the most part, and I like that they write her into the script as a character who can not only handle her own, but is actually very important to the whole GoldenEye system shutting down and the hacking. And, I just like that she is just a fun little character to ride along with. I think when they try and do like the lovey dovey stuff or the trope of like the Bond girl and him falling in love, they could have done a little better, but for the most part, I think they did a really good job. Now we have Nomi, the new 007 for No Time to Die. Depending on who you are and how you feel about this franchise, this might be the worst decisions that they ever put into one of these films. For me, I think her character is fine. I think she's pretty cool. She handles herself. The actress is doing a great job. She gets a good little one liners, a good bit of action. It just kind of feels sad that they have to undermine her because James Bond is coming back into the service and they kind of want to pay that off. She also doesn't have like that loving relationship with Bond, which obviously they're not going to. You have Shaw in this movie for that. But I really wanted to include someone different other than just having Shaw on here twice. It's one girl for each movie, so that makes sense for me. And yeah, I think I'm going to stick her up in Battlefield Ready because she is literally Battlefield Ready, and her and Bond, I think, have a nice little banter. Though it is weird that we have her and Ana de Armas. Kind of wanted to include her because it's Ana de Armas, but she sticks around all the way to the film, and she's a decent successor to Bond herself. Now we have Octopussy from, well, Octopussy. And I gotta say, this is one of the best Bond girls in one of the more weakest movies. I'm going to stick her up in License to Wed. There's something so cool about seeing this strong, independent woman who has like this entire martial arts thing going for her with these like assassins that she hires, all these women that work for her. I just think it's really cool and it really works out for the most part. Her and Bond actually do have a nice relationship. The only thing that sucks is that they have to do this thing where they pretend to kill him off so that he can come back and, kind of show face and be like, hey, I'm alive, but we got to stop this bomb. Her herself is actually just a really good character. I really have no flaws with her and her entire story in the film. Once again, I don't understand why she's working with the bad guys, or why she ends up knowing these guys. I know she's a smuggler, but I think even I would be like, I don't know if I want to work with these guys. But yeah, License to Wed for sure. Pam Bouvier or Bouvier from License to Kill. I gotta say, I really like her. She's a really strong female lead. I don't know if I want to put her all the way up into that S tier with License to Wed, although I guess it would kind of work with License to Kill. She's cool, confident, definitely that kind of character to be the normal, rationale person in the group to Bond's craziness in this film. The actress herself did a lot of crazy stunts and could actually fly that plane at the end of the movie. And as a cop, they just work well together. I think I gotta put it in Built for the Field because in the movie it just feels weird to have a Bond girl at all. With the revenge narrative and everything going on, there's like two women that Bond is kind of like going over with. And I don't know, it just feels weird to even have them at all. Whenever they do kind of fall in love or at the end of the film when they get together, I just don't vibe with it. It just feels very out of place and weird. Pussy Galore from Goldfinger. Yep, License to Wed. I don't care what anyone says. Even at the end of the film with what they do and how egregious it is, even with, the fact that she turns heel and becomes good, it's Pussy Galore. Like, do I need to say more? She's an awesome badass who commands flight, this fleet of like awesome women. She's just in it for her own gain for the most part. And I do think her and Bond just have that nice banter against each other. She's a fantastic femme fatale and a fantastic Bond villain. I really, and even just yeah, altogether, I really have nothing else to say. All right, Solitaire from Live or Let Die. I gotta say, I'm gonna put her up in effective ally or effective allies. I think she is great. I like that she brings in some of that voodooism, some of that cryptic tarot card stuff. I like that her and Bond have this weird relationship all because of some card trick that he does. But I like that she does become a good guy. I like that she starts working with Bond. I like that she is just this person who has this past and this history. With that being said, she kind of is just here to be a Bond girl for Bond girl's sake, and it kind of is there to be like some way to fork over the main villain that we have here and what he's trying to do. I guess you could say she just feels more like a plot device to be some kind of issue or some kind of help for either the heroes or the villains. Yeah, I'm just putting her in effectiveness. She does pretty decent things, but overall, I don't think super memorable other than the look and the Talo cards. Now we have Stacy Sutton from A View to a Kill. She's not as bad as like Mary Goodnight or anything like that. Actually, no, she is. She is. I'm my bad. She's going and spilled the drink. This woman is barely in the movie. She shows up here and there, just far away. Bond's like, "Who is that?" And then she shows up like halfway through the middle of the movie and is like, "Hey, I work for this newspaper. I had to sell my company to the Max guy, and now I want to get revenge on him and go work with you." Through the course of the movie, she ends up becoming the worst damsel in distress, a character who is literally in the film just to look pretty and scream Bond's name whenever she is in need of his help. I think the actress is fine. I think what she's trying to do with the character is fine. They just needed to write it better, especially for Roger Moore's last outing as Bond. Tatiana Romanova from Russia with Love. Weird how that ended up coming out. She, I think, is a really kind, sweet person and individual, and I like how she gets roped into all of this with Bond, and I like how she instantly sees him and just falls in love and doesn't even care about what she had to do with her duties. She just wants to be there with Bond and connect with him and be his new lover, and that's all she cares about. With that being said, she's not really built for the field. The movie writes very specific ways in order to get her to be out of the situation or asleep or not really involved with what's going on, just kind of in the side of the car while Bond's doing the more action stuff. As much as I really like her as a character and what she does in this film, and the fact that she's actually involved in the movie more than Honey Rider, I got to put her in the same list as Honey Rider. I got to give her desk support. I don't think they give her enough or enough of an angle or a story to really be anything other than just Bond gets with this girl this time. Tiffany Case from Diamonds Are Forever, and she is going straight into Spilled the Drink. Just like Stacy Sutton, she is a dumb klutz who almost ruins everything that Bond is going for. She slowly but surely fades out from this femme fatale persona in order to become just, "Ooh, Bond, I want to help. What should I do?" Diamonds Are Forever is just one of those movies where they just don't take it seriously, and neither does the talent on stage. And she is trying to do her best, I believe. Man, it's just weird. The performance is just weird. The entire movie is weird. So, yeah, that's where she's going. Tracy Bond, Licensed to Wed. Is there anything I need to say more? It's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. It is the Bond girl. What happens to her at the end of the film is so shocking and so heartfelt and so impactful, and it leaves a stain on the franchise. Well, my bad. It doesn't leave a stain on the franchise, it leaves a mark on the franchise. That's what I should say. That's a good way to go with it. I mean, I call her Tracy Bond because that's what she is by the end of the film, but she's not in the movie a good bit, at least until like middle to end. But for what she's there for, it is emotionally impactful. Her and Bond, the chemistry is so on point, and you just actually feel something by the end of it all, and I love that. Now we have Valerie Mathis. Yeah, so I'm gonna put her in desk support. The thing with her is that she's played by a good actress. She's given a role that works for what it needs to be. There's just not a lot of time to spend with her for like 50 minutes. I would say she kind of plays like a damsel in distress in this situation, but not really. If anything, Bond is more the damsel in distress, and she actually ends up doing a good bit to help Bond in this film and doing a lot more than he's actually doing, if I'm being honest. The thing is that they have this history and this backstory that they just tell us, and we just don't really get to experience anything or any time with her. It's also weird that they decided to combine both the character of Mathis and Vesper Lynn from the novel in order to just make this character for the story, and because it has to be shorter. Overall, she's fine, and she's one of the only inclusions when it comes to these lists, when it comes to that 1950s Casino Royale. Vesper Lynn from Casino Royale 2006. Oh, Licensed to Wed, man. Uh, what can I say? It's the original, well, not the original, but it's Vesper Lynn, for crying out loud. She comes off with such this like charismatic abrasiveness when it comes to Bond, but shortly over time we see that she's actually just a very vulnerable, scared woman in a situation that she can't get out of. and her and Bond actually do connect and fall in love. But I also love that she still tries to keep a sort of posture with herself. I love that by the end of it, you actually see that she was a good person and wanted to really help Bond, but she was just stuck in a bad situation. And for me, by the end, it wins me over completely simply because of how good both Bond and her are in that film. Vesper Lynn 67. This movie, I swear, Casino Royale 67 is a weird one. I'm going to put her in Effective Ally. Look, here's the thing. There are a lot of women and a lot of stuff that goes crazy with that movie, but I chose her because she's Vesper Lynn. It's the Casino Royale storyline, even though she is a bad guy who just gets killed off like everyone else and isn't really there, connecting with Bond. It was the best one I could go with for the most part. With that being said, you have Ursa, who played Honey Rider, back in the role, and she's clearly having a fun time, and it is fun and entertaining. She's definitely one of the highlights of the film overall, and she gets a lot of fun, goofy moments that I think are just kind of stick in your head a little. For the most part, there's nothing more than I can say other than the fact that I just needed something to fill that movie's slot, and she happened to be the best one. All right, so last and most certainly not least, Waylon. I think it's Wylan. I tried to search it up, but I think that's what I'm gonna go with. She is really good in this film. Definitely one of the highlights of Tomorrow Never Dies. As someone who's not that big of a fan of it, obviously. Am I gonna be generous? I think I am. It is Michelle Yeoh. I love Michelle Yeoh, absolutely do. She gets some awesome action fight scenes. She's just a cool, awesome agent from her own respective country. And I just love what her and Bond do in this, and it is the highlight of the film. And yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. I can't see her putting her anywhere else. All right, so looking back over it in the bottom list, the Domino, Christmas Jones, Mary Goodnight, Stacey Sutton, Tiffany Case. I think that all tracks for the most part. The other Domino, Honey, Kissy, Tanasha, Valerie, and Death Support. Yeah, I feel bad for Romanoff, but yeah, I think that works. Next list up, Camille, Jinx, Madeline, Solitaire, Vesper Lynn. Eh, You know what? Because Vesper Lynn shouldn't really count, I'm going to switch those two. I'm going to put Vesper Lynn at the end of Death Support, and then I'm going to remove Tasha up to, Effective Allies. Built for the Field, Holly Goodnight, Holly Goodhead, Madeline Shaw, Tara, Naomi, Pam. Yeah, I think that just works. I think that tracks for what the films are going for and for what they're giving us. So yeah, License to Wed, Anya, Eve, Natalia, Octopussy, Pussy Galore, Tracy Bond, Vesper Lynn, Waylon. Yep, that is the full list right there. I'm very happy with that. And going through and seeing how the women have evolved and aged over the time with the Bond films and how they've majorly improved in some areas and not in others. For the most part, I'm really happy to have gotten to experience these films and see a lot of these cool, awesome women who are up at the top just kick ass and be awesome. Bond is really only ever as good as his female counterpart, and this is my list. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you really did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button and share it with everyone. It really helps build the channel. Also, if you want to keep up with the rest of Jamesy and everything else that I have planned for Gear Up Productions, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get all the notifications. Make sure to comment down below and let me know what you thought of this video and the ranking and everything that I included when it comes to the Bond women. Of course, if you want to take it a step further, make sure to actually check in that description for that link to the tier list itself. Only 3 days left on this Bond adventure, and tomorrow we're taking a look at the villains. Stay tuned for that. Gear up and gear out.